Hi, and welcome to episode 4 of Conversations with the Pioneer with me, Kushan Mitra. Today I have another friend of mine from college, Angad Singh Chaudhary. Angad was 2 years junior to me, and he was always smarty pants, but he actually went and did something about being so smart. He went and got himself a doctorate from the SOAS in London on anthropology, and he's doing some very fascinating things around anthropology in the digital age using artificial intelligence. And I've always wanted to ask this. Today we're having so many conversations about artificial intelligence or AI. Angad, what is AI? What is AI? How is AI changing everything? And explain some of the work you're doing, which I find fascinating when you come out with your reports.
Kushan, thanks for having me. It's so nice to see you, even though it's COVID time.
Yeah.
And thanks for that really nice introduction. Uh, I think for us, machine learning and as it's known as artificial intelligence represents a bunch of technological innovations that have happened over a long period of time that are now being instrumentalized by many industries in order to increase their computing power, increase their analytical power, increase in how computers follow instructions. So one of the, I think, concerns that a lot of people have is that the human in the driving seat is no longer very, very strongly in the driving seat for a lot of this technology. And it kind of opens up a lot of concerns and fears. But having worked in the business now for 3.5, 4 years, it's very clear we're very far from the Terminator scenario.
Okay. But the U.S. Air Force just ran a trial using AI to, shoot down planes against a human pilot. But of course,
Yeah,
we do know that drones are the future of warfare, no matter whether ground
yeah,
or in the air. So the human will probably get out of many of these things.
yeah. Unpleasant tasks.
Unpleasant task. And but you've done some very fascinating projects with some social media firms. In our previous discussions, you've spoken about how you're working around child protection and even mental health issues. How
Yeah.
suicide prevention. Some of the aspects that where machine learning and artificial intelligence can analyze huge amounts of data very quickly and prevent people from doing self-harm or harming children.
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that question because it's much more in my area of expertise. So my company and the reason we do AI is because fundamentally it allows us to see patterns and
Mhm.
understand things that a human eye cannot discern.
Mhm.
From when I was doing offline anthropology, I used to do, as you know, anthropology in crime scenes, and I
Mhm.
used to do anthropology in fairly hairy places. And there would be a limited amount of data that the person, that was me, the ethnographer, would process. So we'd look at some evidence, we'd look at some conversations, we might look at some rituals, but it was a limited data set. With the advent of the internet and the ability of researchers on the internet to see so much more, it's not feasible for one person to interpret all of that information anymore. So what happens is we start using computers. We start using computers to find patterns. Uh, First, by asking them to look for certain connections, and then saying, "Tell us what the connections are." And what this "tell us what these connections are" does for us is it allows us to suddenly see things, discover things about people and humanity that no amount of research could have done in a manual way. So that for us is the magic of AI. I'm Planes and things like that are way out of our comfort zone. So I'm glad you asked the question around how we use it. So very quickly on the child protection piece, we found that there were there was a there was a huge surge of searches on child protection, child pornography after the lockdown. Uh,
Okay.
some of our rough calculations show that they almost doubled, and
Wow.
so yeah, in India, and there was
In
no
India.
rural
Oh,
urban.
yeah.
Yes, so there was no rural urban bias to it. So overall, we had about 20 million searches a day for all sorts of keywords in this space, And for very specific keywords like child porn or child pornography, which were very directly linked, we literally doubled those. So it was a bit of a shock for us because we were tracking a limited set of keywords. Now, the language of the language of demand for child sexual abuse material changes very quickly. So you have, so today you might type in child pornography. Tomorrow there might be some unique keyword formulation like CP or child po or even bachabazi, etc. that the people searching for child pornography will search for. It's very hard for a human to keep updating a dictionary. Okay, child porn, etc., etc. But once a machine understands the concept, then the machine can almost stay one step ahead by generating keywords and combinations and learning. So to give you a very crazy example, we had a data set of about 300 keywords related to child pornography, and we were monitoring the Indian search for it. Uh, and it was stabilizing, but then the machine, based on the historical data it had seen, came up with the conclusion that words like ballerina and braces and soft skin were the new proxies. Now, this is not something a human can pick up, but a machine can say, look, this is what's happening now. And then a human can look in and say, oh my God, this is indeed happening. So it sounds a little Minority Report-esque, but it's interesting how it can start thinking in the way a perpetrator does based on millions and millions of data points in the past. So that's how we've looked at child protection.
So
I
you
can
are
talk
preventing
about
from finding this material, or I mean, it's not Minority Report isn't pre-crime, but you're preventing something maybe not prosecutable power, but definitely preventing access to something. So again, you did a very interesting study around suicide prevention and
yes.
how just studying social media posts can sort of figure out a person's mental condition, mental health.
Yeah, Kushan, again, as you know, we've known each other for a really long time. I've always been interested in psychoanalysis along with anthropology, and I've always been fairly interested in that space. One of the things that struck me, I think, in 2018 and 2019 is there was many celebrities who had committed suicide, and they were fairly active on the internet. They were like posting on Instagram, saying stuff on tweets. And even now, recently, it's happened in India as well. And there was never a pattern. Like all their friends would say, oh, if only we'd known, they looked so happy on social media, etc. So that was the problem statement we were trying to solve. Now, from the history of psychoanalysis and even psychotherapy, you know that there are certain patterns that a therapist can pick up when they feel that a person is going into danger. So offline, there is a model, but there's no model online. If we work with the assumption that offline is an extension and online is a reflection of offline, then there has to be a pattern online. So what we did is we took all of the Instagram accounts of, I think, 30 such figures who had committed suicide, and we ran it all into our machines and gave the machine a very simple brief. The brief was, what is the pattern? Use whatever you want, tell us the pattern. We don't know what the pattern is. There is something in common with these 30 accounts, tell us what it is. And the most amazing thing happened. The first thing we did, it ran a lot of things which didn't work, but the things that worked were the following. It went pixel by pixel in everybody's image since they started uploading in 2010 or 11 or 12. So it looked at all of the color palettes of all of these images, and they saw that towards the end of everybody's life, whether they were a chef or an adult film actress or an ordinary person, gray sepia tones would be increasing by microscopic amounts in the visuals that they were uploading. So even now, if you just look at any of these accounts, you'll see the last few have a slight more gray sepia tinge to them than everything else before.
So that was one in India just now. I think that the famous suicide over here, we don't know if it was a suicide as yet, but even that there was, the posts were old pictures, sepia toned and black and white. Yeah.
Correct. So that was one pattern we saw. Second pattern we saw was, I also, a crude version of mental health is if someone is sad, online like an offline world, they would have negative expressions of their life online. We found something very different. We found that they didn't go negative. See, in sentiment analysis, there's positive, I love it, I'm so happy, whatever, and there's negative, which is like, I hate you, I'm going to kill you. They went actually neutral, which was a very fascinating piece. So they'd keep writing, but that emotion had left their lives. Now, take this image point and this language point together, you'll notice that Instagram or whatever the social media forum is, the purpose of it is for you to express yourself. Like you have to say something, you have to be creative, whatever. So what they were doing was they were actually disconnecting from the logic of the platform. They were becoming more sepia, more faded. The language was becoming more neutral. So they were actually suiciding almost from a public rule book of how they're supposed to express themselves. Now, the issue with this system is we cannot deploy it. Because if we deploy it, then it becomes a huge privacy violation, because you might just be experimenting with sepia tones, Kushan, and you shouldn't be flagged into the system. So we've closed our research and development on this for now, because we're really not sure how we can deploy this and which governments and mental health institutions would work with this and handle this with care.
And that brings us to another point about privacy and data protection and AI. How much information do I want? I mean, the governments already have a lot of information about all of us, but now they can process that information and make connections in ways I would rather not the government or any power that we find out. What are your thoughts on data protection and privacy?
So I have a very, Punjabi perspective, villager perspective on this, because that's where I'm from, which is, if you don't want it to happen to you, you shouldn't let it happen to anyone else. So that's my basic, almost hokey village wisdom on this. But on a more serious note, I think data protection and privacy is a fairly strong subject. There are very strong rules and regulations in place already. I think one of the advantages we have is a lot of data exists in silos. So there's Google data, there's Facebook data, there's Instagram data, there's mobile phone operator data, etc. So those volumes of connections cannot be made. And also working in the industry, I think it's fairly clear that the power of it for something to become powerful and accurate requires many, many iterations. So I personally believe we're a little far from that level of minority report stuff. But again, I'm not in the state or intelligence world, so I don't know how far they have progressed.
No, you don't know how far they've progressed. If you have progressed so far with certain things, they might have also been progressing over the last few years, making the iterations. Angad, how's the lockdown been for you? You're in Singapore, so have things been for you down there? Are things easing up in Singapore?
Yes, I think we have got the cases under control. There is social distancing, there's check-ins everywhere we go. So I think we're on our way. I don't think the virus is over. I think we have some time before life returns to some semblance of normality. And normality means movement, rhythm, connection for me.
Normality means taking a haircut for both of us, I guess. It's been a while.
I'm glad you noticed.
Yeah, I know. Both of us. I mean, I just ran a trimmer through my hair some time ago. Angad, it's been a pleasure talking to you. These are not very long conversations, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining me today, and we will stay in touch and possibly do another one soon. Thanks a ton.
Thank you for having me.